everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my November wrap-up. Now this is going to be a pretty quick video, my guys, because November was my worst reading month of the entire year. I am not kidding you. I have just been looking at my bullet journal and seeing all that I've read in November, and I've only read 5 books, which is fine. And I don't really mind, but as someone who usually averages about 10 to 12 a month, a lot less than usual. I haven't read 5 books in a month in like well over 2 years now, so I guess that happens sometimes. I'm not entirely sure. But I think it's to do with the fact that it was NaNoWriMo this month and mental health wasn't that great, and I just didn't have time to pick up books because writing took over my life. So today we're gonna go over the 5 books that I read in November. All right, so I ended up reading 1 YA fantasy, 1 adult fantasy, 1 adult sci-fi, and a fiction novel, and a graphic novel, which is exciting because that was my first graphic novel that I've read all year. I had 2 3.5 stars, 2 4 stars, and a 5 star, and a DNF, but we won't talk about the DNF because I don't remember what it was. What was my DNF this year, or this month? What did I DNF this month? Oh yes, of course, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, but like, you guys well know that I DNF'd that one, so we're just gonna talk about the 5 that I did read. All right, my friends, first up, I finally finished up When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. This was my personal pick for my book club with my friends that I have in real life, and we all did enjoy the read, but I don't think it was like a complete win across the board. The general consensus was that this was like baby's first feminism book. It hits you over the head with feminism over and over and over again. And Kelly Barnhill definitely does stay in her lane as a white woman, but this book was very white. This was very white feminism in the 50s kind of vibe, which wasn't bad, but it also was lacking in that as well. I enjoyed the sister relationship in this, and I did enjoy the read. The writing was really good. I enjoyed like the journal entries and the news articles that were interspersed in this, and like the concept was really cool. So this follows our main character, Alex, who is a young girl at the beginning of this, and in 1955, everyone in America, mainly, there are cases of being outside of America where there are women who are dragoning and they are just turning into dragons, and it becomes this big taboo topic where, because it's linked to femininity and womanhood and sexuality, nobody talks about it. No one's allowed to talk about it. It's super taboo. It's a topic that is never broached. If you mention dragons at all, people will look at you like super scandalized. And so she goes through this, and it's like her growing up and her losing her mother and her having to like essentially raise her sister and going through this whole self-discovery as well as like learning more about dragons themselves. And it's the world kind of shifting and losing all these women and having to come to terms with that, and then kind of regaining them back in a way. It's a very interesting narrative. I think it could have done so much more if it was set in our time, like now, like 2022 instead of the 1950s, because unfortunately a lot of these issues are still happening. It could have been a lot more subtle if it was set now, and you could have had more conversations about genderqueer people and trans people included in this, because there are a couple mentions that it's not just women who are dragoning, but we don't ever get more than that. And I'm like, Kelly Barnhill, give us more. Please give us more. And there were a few instances where it like towed the line of equating the dragoning to race, and I was just like, Kelly, I see you stepping, and I don't like this at all. So it was a little interesting, but I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. I think it was okay and an enjoyable read. If you're going into this, please be aware of how feminist it is, and it is quite an exhausting narrative to get through. Next, I ended up reading Babel by R.F. Kuang, and this was so good. This is probably the best book that I've read all year. It is not my favorite book that I've read all year, but it is definitely in the top 10 favorites of the year for me. This was just exceptionally well written. It is a full-on masterpiece, my guys. It is so good. 5 stars easily. I'm so glad that I ended up picking this one up and reading it. I ended up spending like an entire weekend devoted just to Babel, and I was so excited about it, and I read it and I was just living my best English major life because it's, you know, so focused on linguistics and words and stuff like that. And it actually made me wish that I had studied words in school and gone for linguistics rather than just an English degree. But it was so well done and so bloody painful. This is definitely a good read. Definitely look up trigger warnings before going into this. It deals heavily with a lot of racism and sexism, and it's like blatant on page. You're dealing with people who just believe these things. It hurts to get through. This is dark academia. This is a historical fantasy. I wouldn't even call it a fantasy, to be honest. It's more of a, I almost want to say speculative fiction, because like the magic in here is so scientifically endowed, and it's set in our world. There's just this one added extra thing in it that I guess could make it fantasy, which is the metalworking that they do in here, which is tied to linguistics and stuff like that. So yeah. This is set in 1828 in Oxford. So, and it follows Robin Swift, who is a orphaned boy from Canton. He's picked up by this white man savior figure who teaches him, educates him, and then puts him into Oxford to be part of this metalworking program and essentially learn metalworking and that kind of stuff, because he is bilingual, trilingual. He becomes like versed in Latin and Greek and all this kind of stuff as well. So, and he has a way with words, which is why he's in here. But it's an expansive novel. It covers many years. It covers Robin growing up and Robin then going to Oxford and learning in Oxford and all the stuff that goes wrong. And it is very good. It is very good. Masterpiece, truly. 5 stars if I didn't already say that. Then I ended up picking up The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas, which is this little queer, heartwarming YA fantasy. It is well written. I enjoyed Aiden Thomas's other work, Cemetery Boys, when I read it, so I was intrigued to pick this one up, and I've heard only good things about it. So I enjoyed it, definitely. I ended up giving it like 4 stars, 3.5, 4 stars. It was definitely very good, and it was one of those books that has absolutely astronomical comps. When you read it, you're like, yeah, okay, I can see those comps. This is comp to The Hunger Games meets Percy Jackson, and it does hit those notes, but I don't think it does what either of those books do in their essence and core. I think the only way that it like is comped is in very specific ways. So this follows our main character Teo, who is a demigod, and in this world these demigods and their parents, their godly parents, are part of this whole thing, and there's like this trial that's gonna happen between all these what they're called golds, or Sunbearer Trials, to become the next Sunbearer, which happens every year and happens to like reinstate the soul stone or whatever to keep darkness at bay. It's a whole thing. So in that, in like the demigods and the godly parents and having different kind of powers throughout the kids, very Percy Jackson. That's the only real Percy Jackson layer I would give it though, because there wasn't as much like Percy humor throughout. It did have a little bit of a vibe of a Rick Riordan novel. By the end of it, I was like, I could go to the next one and read it easily, but I'm not like wanting it, you know? It's one of those like Percy, I could just read the Percy Jackson series over and over and over again because you just want to keep going with Rick's books. That's the vibe you get from this. And then it feels like The Hunger Games because of the trial thing. But I think The Hunger Games does the deadly trial a lot better because no one dies during the trials in this. A little bit of a spoiler, but like it didn't have the high stakes of The Hunger Games, I think. But yeah, it was a weird feeling where I was like, yeah, that definitely works with those comps, but it doesn't quite live up to those comps in like prowess, because The Hunger Games is amazing and the Percy Jackson series is amazing. But yeah, this kind of fits nicely in there, and it's very queer and it's very lovely, which is such a staple of Aiden Thomas's writing. You just feel like heartwarmed at the end of it, and I am excited for the next one. I think the next one's gonna be great. I think that's where we're gonna get more of a quest line, which will be, you know, more fun for me, because I'm not the biggest fan of like trial books, which is very rare. I know a lot of people really love trial books, so Aiden Thomas's The Sunbearer Trials, quite a good read, and I'm glad that I did pick it up. Then I ended up reading this little novella in an attempt to read more books in November, and I ended up reading This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. This was baffling. I still don't know if I liked it. Like, in the vlog that I was filming at the time that I was reading this, I read this all in one sitting, and I was like just kind of caught up in the enchantment of that, and I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. This definitely warrants a reread because I understood so very little of this book, and in a way of like, usually I love confusing books. Case in point, these 3 boys right here. I love confusing books, as well as The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, another one that I'm just like, if I know I'm gonna be satisfied at the end, where if I don't know what's going on, I love it. This doesn't have that satisfaction to it. It really doesn't. So it was good, but I also didn't like it very much. So I ended up giving it 3.5 stars after running it through Compile because it was still really beautifully written, and I think it warrants a reread to see if I understand it more a second time around. I honestly couldn't really explain it to you other than it follows Red and Blue, these two different, I almost want to say like Time Lords from Doctor Who, time beings who live through millennia and can travel through millennia back and forth and sideways and whatever. I don't really understand what they're doing or why they're doing it, but there's a war at some point. Both of them are on like opposite sides, like Romeo and Juliet style, and they're writing each other letters, but they're not actually letters. They're like left in these like different ways over millennia that then the other people come to and read, which I don't know how that works, because how would the other person know where the person is at that time to receive that letter in that exact way? It's very confusing. Like, it was beautifully done and really magical of a concept, but I just couldn't grasp it very well. So maybe it's only a 3-star for me. I'm not entirely sure. Bamboozled by this. Like, the best part was near the end when everything started to make a little bit more sense because the stakes actually came in. I don't know, like it made a little bit more sense. It was a little bit more linear. I think that was what was really throwing me off. Like, it was linear throughout because you get the order of it's very structured. You get the order of the letters as the people are receiving it. So you'll have like a red chapter, and then red will receive a letter from blue, and then you'll have a blue chapter and you receive a letter from red, etc., 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 going on. But each of the blue or red chapters, you have no idea what's going on in them because it's just a moment in their lives or a moment in time, essentially. And I feel like there's so many references in here that I missed, and again, I need to reread this to be able to understand it more. I feel like this would be a good book to study with someone who's an expert in this book, you know? Like, so many people love this book, and I don't understand the book to love it, you know? Which is so unfortunate because I think this could be something that I really, really do enjoy. And then finally, last night, I ended up picking up and finishing this little graphic novel, which is called Garlic and the Vampire by Brie Paulson. I had this just on my shelves after Meg from Meg's Tea Room on TikTok recommended this in one of her cozy fantasy videos because this is just an adorable little cozy graphic novel, and it is so cute. So it is about all these little vegetables and herbs that are grown in a garden by a witch, and they like help her garden. They've like come to life as themselves, and then they grow more of their kind of thing, essentially. So you have garlic and celery and carrot and whatever. During this, one of them, Celery, sees that this castle in the distance has like smoke coming out of it, and all of the veggies get really worried because they're like, what does this mean? This has been an abandoned castle. What does this mean? The witch is like, well, maybe it's a vampire because that used to be a vampire's castle. And then they all really panic, and then they tell Garlic to go and deal with it because garlic is garlic, and everybody knows that vampires don't like garlic. But Garlic, our little girl here, so anxious, homegirl, anxiety personified. And so she like loses her mind, but she ends up going anyway because she says that like people are expecting it of her. So she goes and she gets a little bit of courage and a little bit of help from the witch lady who like gives her all these different things that she's gonna need to deal with the vampire. And it is just adorable, and I'm obsessed with the art. And like every once in a while you'll get a little like vignette of things that are happening, kind of like a scene change. Like, it's so cool. Like for chapter 2, for example, you get a little chapter 2, and then you get a little vignette. It's just kind of like a scene vignette to set the scene, and then they go into the scene with garlic and carrot. And this art is probably my favorite art I've ever come across in a graphic novel. It is so beautiful. I really enjoyed this. It was very cozy, comfy. Like, look at this beautiful art. Obsessed. I gave this 4 stars. It was so cute. It just heartwarming. That's what this was. Heartwarming. But yes, my friends, that's it. That's all I read in November. What a short little video, but I hope you enjoyed either way. Please let me know down below what you read this month and what you really enjoyed, or if you've read any of the books that I have read and your thoughts on them, because I'd love to know. That's it. We're on to the last month of 2022 now. Hopefully December is a better reading month for me. I have more reading plans. If you missed out on my like reading plan video that I have up already for December, I also talk through my video plans for December in that video as well. So stay tuned, make sure to subscribe and hit the little bell icon so you know when I upload, because there's gonna be a fair bit of content coming from me this December for you guys. I think it's gonna be like 8 different videos in total, plus maybe plus my vlog, which are, you know, pretty constant and a thing. So stay tuned because there's gonna be a lot of content coming from me in December. It's gonna be a great time. It's gonna be chill because of course I don't really like have the energy to do a lot, but you're still gonna get all these videos from me because there are a lot of Fridays in December. There are 5 Fridays, which is usually when I upload. I also like doing my stats goals video back to back, so the 30th and the 31st this year, as well as, you know, a couple extra videos here and there that I have already underway. So they'll just be given to you at some point. Some point, who knows when, I don't. But anyways, my friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.